80% of AI automation basics in less than 1 hour. This is what we're going to be talking about today. And by the end of the video, you will have a full-on understanding of everything you need to know to start and scale your AI agency in a fraction of time versus your competitors. This comes from someone who scaled his own AI agency to 50K in less than 5 months and who's currently coaching around 300 people in my community on how to do the same. The reason why I decided to do this video is because there is a lot of content and a lot of hype around AI, and this is you, actually. You have the opportunity of spending either hundreds of hours watching everything you can about AI automation on YouTube and getting lost in thousands of videos, or you have the opportunity of acquiring 80% of the basics that you need in order to start your AI agency with just a single video. So now that this is clear, and now that you, of course, chose to watch the video, we can move to the first thing. AI automation is not a new business model. Why do we start with this very boring but very important concept? Because when you join AI automation, specifically right now, there is a lot of hype, and I really want you to avoid falling into the hype or the thinking that this business model is something new, like a sort of unicorn that if you don't exploit now, you will never be able to, because, I don't know, AI is becoming so prominent and then you will lose the AI gold rush and whatever that is, right? This business model is actually a copy-paste of everything that is already there for some other type of businesses. Of course, we're talking about service businesses. And the AI agency model is very similar to what you would use for a recruitment agencies, to a, I don't know, media company or media agency, or for, I don't know, plumbers and etc. And in order to do that and to understand it better, let's analyze the business model of a general service company. So you start always with some sort of lead generation mechanisms, right? May it be cold emails, you can have DMs if you're using media, LinkedIn, Instagram, and so on and so forth. You have paid ads or PPC, and you have the possibility of being referred from a customer, right? So once you get leads, then eventually at one point, in order to start converting, all of these business models require some sort of sales call, because you're going to be selling through a sales call, because we're not talking about a digital product, right? That a PDF that you sell online or any other type of businesses. So you are going to hop on a call with a client, and then eventually, if the call is successful or not, depends, you are going to have some sort of proposal of whatever sort. Now, in this specific case, if you're talking about AI automation, you are going to send a proposal of what could be the service that you're going to implement and how much it could cost. But if you're talking about recruitment agencies, it could be simply the placement of a candidate, right? So the proposal itself, if you zoom out and you squint a little bit, you understand that as of now, nothing that we described is specific to AI automation. The real change for AI automation is on the fulfillment part, right? Because how you fulfill, it's different, because in here is where you actually deliver the AI automation, or where you actually, place the candidate. So for this very reason, it's important to understand that the AI automation agency, compared to all of the other models, is only different when we talk about fulfillment, but nothing else. And then after the fulfillment, which will take place, your ability to retain customer and therefore to generate more dollars will be directly proportional with the amount of money that you make. Generally speaking, we're never talking about doing a one-off project, but the real money in AI automation or in service business is in what we call like retainer contract, or the chance of, delivering an upfront project, maybe let's call it underpaid or on purpose discounted, up to you, in order to then have the opportunity of spotting more and more pain points of the client that you can solve, and then you can get more and more money, right? This is to say, nothing of what we are going to be talking about is new or is difficult. Everything is already there. And why is this relevant? Well, this is relevant because now that I'm starting to coach hundreds of people, I'm starting also to be able to distinguish patterns and see who succeeded and doesn't succeeded in the AI space. And what I can tell you is that most of the times, the people that come in with a very high technical background and etc., one of the first things that they say is, okay, I'm very good at building the automation. I'm not a good marketer, or I'm not good at selling, sales, and etc. So what this means basically is that you're not good at running a business yet, right? So we need to fix that part before we go and dive deeper into the tech and all of that stuff that will just make your automation better or slightly more valuable for the business. However, it's not going to be directly correlated with your ability to generate money online, which is what we actually want to focus on when we talk about AI automation agency and scaling it, right? So we need to focus for this very reason on the core fundamentals first, because winning in this business model is directly correlated with your ability to attract leads, sell to those leads, and retain those leads. And by the way, let me be completely clear with you. You can be totally average at building automation, but if you're good at fundamentals, which are these three skills, you're going to be making much more money than anyone who's deeply technical in the space. Now, moving on to the second point, here we're going to be talking briefly about APIs. And the reason is that most likely if you're watching this video, you're most likely a beginner in the AI automation space if you're watching this type of content. And here I want to be clear with you. API, which stands for Application Programming Interface, goodness, I'm not good at acronyms, is basically a service URL that is somewhere on the internet that allows you to get data from somewhere from the internet, let's imagine right here, and allows you to send it to some other part of the internet, right? So in our example here, we're using APIs in order to send the data out. And what these are is basically the ability of our platforms to connect with some third-party service that's not natively connected with them. What does it mean in very simple terms? When you're using and building AI automation, you are most likely going to be using one of those low, no-code platform tools, which is Make.com and A10 and etc. So you're basically dragging and dropping nodes. And you know that this platform natively have something connected to them, which is these nodes that allow you to access external services. An example is, Calendly, ClickUp, Google Sheets, and so on and so forth, right? But these platforms do not have every service across the web connected to them, and your ability to use these external services, generally speaking, is directly correlated with the amount of value that you can provide to the customers. Because if you are actually able to use third-party services in your automation, you are, first of all, having more leverage in order to do what you want to do, because maybe you are going to be able to do it with a much simpler or cheaper way because a service that maybe is not natively integrated costs less. But also, you have more leverage with the ability to do more things because maybe some functionality are not native there and therefore needs to be taken from somewhere else in the internet, right? And in order to connect with these third-party platforms and everything we just discussed, we're going to be using API. Let me now run you through a quick example of what an API is. And in order to understand it, we want to start scraping this website. This is Hacker News. This is just a normal website, right? Right here. And the service we're going to be using in order to scrape this is Firecrawl. So what this allows you to do, if you go on Playground and you just paste the URL right here, and then you position yourself with the scrape, and then you start scraping, is that basically what happens is that on the back end, Firecrawl spins its own server, and then what's going to do is it's going to scrape and therefore gather all of the data on this specific URL for us. And once it did, it's going to send us back these information within a JSON format or a Markdown format, right? So now, as you can see, I have the same information that I was reading here, so enclose horse and etc. right here. So basically what it did is it extracted all of the information and now I have them available, okay? What I want to do now is I want to go to NA10 and I want to start integrating this service to NA10, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is what we call an HTTP request. And we're now going to compile all of these fields with the documentation that we need to gather for Firecrawl. So in order to connect with the APIs, we're going to be going on Google. And what we're going to be typing is Firecrawl API docs. And we see that right here we have a so-called API reference. You're then going to be able to sign in. And once you are signed in, you see that you have a sort of intimidating interface because you have documentation, SDKs, API reference, and you most likely will not know most of what these means. But this is not a problem because what you need to know is simply the type of action that you want to perform, because these APIs are very simple to understand. And that's why also I chose this service. And also, you will notice that the way that you use API is sort of standards across all of the services, third-party services that we're going to be using, right? So in our example, we want to scrape a URL, and we see that right here, we have a bunch of code written with this format, right? And this is called curl. Now, if we go back to NA10 and we go right here, we notice that in order to access this API, we need to have a method and then a URL. Now, if I go to Firecrawl, I will notice that the request is post. So going back to my NA10, let me just move it quickly closer. I notice that the method is a post method. Now, if I go right here, I notice that this is the exact URL that I want to place inside here. So URL, I will now go back and see that my authentication is a bearer and the API key that you have right here, right? So what we're going to be doing is authentication. We're going to be sending here, and we're going to be calling authorization, and we're going to be calling bearer, right? And then we need the API keys, because we just copied this first part. And once again, just to ensure that I made it correctly, it's here. Then we have a space, and then we need the API keys. Where do we find them? We go back to Firecrawl initial interface. We go back to this page right here, API keys. We're going to create it and call it NA10 file, create key. You're going to be copying your API key, and I will for sure delete it just after this video. Otherwise, everyone is going to use my API key in order to scrape Firecrawl. And now we notice that this is completed. What is it left is now another header, another variable called content type. Add parameters, content type, and you need the value of application/JSON. And now we see that we have a gigantic body right here, and the only thing that we're interested for our example is the URL and most likely the formatting. So right here, I'm going to copy all of this. I'm going to go into body, JSON, using the fields below, JSON. I'm going to paste everything, and I am going probably to delete everything from here to here. And I'm going simply to replace this with the URL of the page that I want to scrape. Okay, perfect. Now, what can I do? I can simply execute step. You will notice that now here, this is all it takes to connect the API, right? But we are lucky enough that NA10 with time made it even more simple to do all of these processes, right? Because now that you saw the first method, I'm going to show you other two real quick. And the first one is that right here, instead of doing all of this process that might lead to errors, you have the ability of copying the stuff right here with the where there is a curl. You're going to press here, import curl. You're going to paste everything, and then you're going to import it. And as you can see, everything is already pre-populated for you, provided that you're providing the right API keys. So we're going to be going back right here, and I'm just going to make sure that I pasted the right ones, right? And you will see that even here, once again, the only thing that I will have to do will be to delete all of this part, right? And I'm going to just do this and paste the URL. Once this is done, I can again press execute, and this will once again do this. Now, why did I make and did I use Firecrawl? Because recently, actually not so recent, but it's fine, NA10 also integrated this service, so right here, inside NA10. So as you can see now, I am able to access directly Firecrawl within NA10. And this changes because the only thing that I have to do is now copy paste the thing, and execute step, right? And this will go. So now you saw 3 methods to do the same stuff. So this used a HTTP request with API call, as if Firecrawl was not inside NA10 and was an external service. And with this automation right here, with this actually API call right here, you are actually using a node inside NA10. And why is this relevant? Because with this simple example, you understand that it doesn't matter if you're using an external service or something that it's built internally. You are always doing an API call behind the scene. And this is extremely important because mastering API, as I mentioned before, will be something that will be directly correlated with your ability to deliver value to your clients. Okay? Great. So now, webhooks. Real quick, what is a webhook? As you noticed, when we were talking about Firecrawl and overall the API calls, we were always talking about a service that we used in order to send the data out, right? Now we want to send the data back in. And what is a webhook? A webhook is, simply put, a custom URL that you can use in order to activate some sort of other workflow or some sort of services on your end whenever something happens in another service. Let me make a clearer example. Let's imagine that you are, having your automation connected to your ClickUp and that a lead come in. So when a lead come in, maybe a new row is registered in your ClickUp, and so a new field is created. And when that field is created, we can have that our automation with NA10 maybe starts and maybe sends an email right straight to the lead saying, hey, welcome to the company and A, B, C, and D, right? Now, how are we going to do this? Doing webhook is pretty simple. And by the way, for both API and webhooks, I'm going to link up here somewhere a 15 minutes video that I did in case you want to go deeper on these topics. But overall, I want to make another example for you to be able to understand it, again on NA10. And let's use the same things that we were using right now. So let me go into these webhooks. Let me press it and let me put it right here. So what is a webhook? As we mentioned, is a custom URL, right? So if we press it and we execute and listen, actually, let me copy this. Now the webhook is listening because it's listening in order to understand if some data come in. And you can send a lot of data to your webhook, right? So the easiest way to call a webhook is simply to call the URL that the webhook has, which is this one right here. So if I go right here now and I paste it and I press enter, you will see that it says message workflow was started. But not only that, but we also received all of the data, right? And we can see right here that we used the Mozilla, whatever, and then we have here. Now, one thing that I want you to notice is that exactly because we have that your webhook is a URL, we have the opportunity of sending data to this webhook, and we're gonna do now a very quick example. Because I'm gonna, let's send a body equal chow as a variable. And we can see from this example that right here, we are able to send the data across the web, because just like that, we are able to send it with the browser from the URL that we're calling straight to NA10, and NA10 just received the data and now they become part of the workflow. So this is to say, your webhook can be anything, and the place where the webhook is called can be anywhere, right? What matters is just if the service that you are going to connect has the ability of sending webhooks, and once it does, then you're able to send all of the information that you want. Just like we did, now we use the browser, but you could use apps, you could use so many other things, right? And with this, I think this is a great 80-20 of your webhooks. And by the way, webhooks and APIs, you will notice that if you manage to master these skills, I would highly recommend you to invest a little bit of time in order to master these two skills, because you will notice that you will be able to easily 10x the value and also the effectiveness of your application for any sort of business owners. And on top of that, if it's just a matter of dragging and dropping, then this is also something that business owner or businesses can do without you. So your ability of doing something custom will increase the perceived value quite a lot. And this is specifically true for NA10 users, because NA10 is a bit more it's a bit more prone to have a little bit of custom code. Now, when you talk about AI automation, as the word says, AI, it implies that in some way, shape, or form, we are inserting AI within the whole business process. When you are chatting to AI, as you know, we chat through natural language models. And in order to do that, we developed some sort of structure to better communicate with these models, which is what we call prompting. Now, here, this that I'm going to describe to you, it's going to be the 80-20 that will allow you to understand and get good enough at basic automation in order to deliver business value. Of course, if you want to have something exceptional, you will have to go like much, much deeper than this. But for your intent and AI automation and making money with AI, this is more than enough. Now, the prompting basics is that the prompt is the thing that you write inside an AI node, right? Let me now show you an example of something that I actually use in real life. I actually sold this system, and I also made a YouTube video where you can recreate it. I will link it down here. And I just wanted to show you that if you're connecting any OpenAI node, just like this one, at one point you will have to start interacting with your LLM. And how you do it is in a natural language. And so right here, you have the opportunity of giving instruction to your LLM. And you see that the way that you can do it and the type of prompt, you see system, user, and etc., are more than one. So understanding when to use which type of prompt and what these prompts should contain is very relevant. So for this very reason, we divide the basics of prompting into three. What we call system prompt. System prompt, in simple terms, is how the model identifies itself. And that's why when we have a system prompt, we always start with you are an, intelligence personal assistant or a skilled recruitment recruiter or recruitment agent, and so on and so forth. So how the model identifies itself. The user prompt is the task that the model has to perform. So your goal is to, create an icebreaker personalized to the leads based on the information that you receive. And this is what I have in my also in my workflow. And then you get an assistant prompt, which is what the AI gives you back. Basically, you are helping the AI give you the output, right? Now, when you do the prompting and you follow the best practices, let's call them like this, you always start with a system prompt. So you are XXX. Then you go to a user. So your task is YYY. And your output is in this format. So this format is a JSON. Again, another skill that I would highly recommend you to develop, specifically if you are using NA10. I will link another video right here. In 15 minutes, I explain you everything you need to know about JSON. And you can go up and running to building your first automation. And then, and this is where people get sometimes lost, you get another user prompt, which is actually the prompt that is used in order to provide the actual real data to the LLM that the LLM needs to use, right? And then eventually you get the assistant prompt, which is the prompt that you use in order to provide examples to the LLM. Let's say that, again, not best practice, but this could be considered optional, even though highly recommended because it's increasing the performance of your prompt and etc. And an example in practice is this one. So system prompt with you are a LinkedIn post analyst, whatever, role. So here you have the whole prompt that I was showing you before. Then again, user. It's the second time that we're repeating the user, and I gave the LLM the actual data that I wanted to use. And then in this case, I removed it. In the original, you will find it. But I removed this, and you have the assistant prompt, which in this case, as mentioned, it's optional, so it's not here. But you could simply have it inside, and you could be giving more and more example to the LLM. Then, point number 5. What is a test-driven development? So, after coaching, as mentioned, quite few people, I noticed a pattern, which is people think that when you are developing an automation, you have to develop like a bunch of nodes. And I mean, I don't know, 20 nodes, and put them one by one in sequence. And then for some reason, you press enter, you execute the workflow, and it breaks millions of times. By experience, I can tell you that, specifically because I come from a non-technical background, I can tell you that debugging is the most time-consuming and expensive activity that you can do. Expensive because that time that you are spending debugging something that's not working, it's not related to the amount of revenue that you are generating. It's not correlated to your income. It's just that time that you are using in order to figure out something that potentially might not work. And that's why my recommendation is build step by step. What does it mean? It means that you have to start with your first module. Then eventually you test the first module. And what I recommend is also you pin the data, because most of the times it saves you time and it allows you not to reuse the tokens and so the OpenAI stuff, right? The OpenAI tokens and money and credits and so on and so forth. Then once you validated that the first module is okay, then you move to the second, then you test the second, and then you move on throughout your workflow, right? Cool. So this is just to say, whenever you start testing something, please test everything at every step. Let's not test everything just at once, because then we don't know where the issue actually is, or if we have even more than one issue that then we can are just gonna snowball throughout the automation. Now, a point that goes a bit against what I said before, but it's a very important one. Most of the time, starting from the end of the automation is the best way to proceed for two reasons. First of all, most of the times the end of your automation is, I don't want to say the most important one, but it's the whole reason why you build the automation in the first place, right? So let's imagine with this example, if I'm extracting leads, then creating personalized icebreaker, and then sending emails to each individual, what I want to do is that I want to ensure, first of all, that I can send emails to those leads, right? Because I don't want to create all of this automation right here just to realize that this cannot be done. And for this reason, everything I did before is useless. So this is one very important reason. The second reason is the following. Whenever you are building something, and you are building it from scratch, trying to figure out what the best way of building this simple workflow is, what you're going to be doing is what we call trial and errors, right? So you're going to be building something, then you build something else, and maybe the second node is working. Then you build something else, node number 3. Then you go node number 4, and you notice that both nodes number 3 and 4 don't work. So these are actually wrong routes, right? Then you go again and you try with nodes number 5, and then you notice that nodes number 5 is actually the right one, and then you created your overall automation. What happens? What happens is that this part right here and this part right here are dead times that you could have used differently, because those are dead ends, right? We just figured out, okay, they don't work. But the reason why it's important to start from the end is that if we were to start from the end, so right here, we would already know, okay, I know first node, I know last node, and I try to bridge them. And then I can simply start rebuilding the path backward so that I can avoid dead ends and I can kind of have a safer path in order to fully complete the automation. Okay? So for this reason, start from the end always. Okay? Good. And now the last part. Fulfillment, an example. This is actually something that, this is an image, so I can't really show you the SOPs, but I gave it to my community. However, this is actually what happens when you are in fulfillment phase, okay? So most people are overwhelmed by, okay, what does it happen when I actually receive the money, or when does the project start? How do I manage it? And so on and so forth. So to conclude your 80-20 and your 80% of automation basics, we conclude with how to manage a real project, okay? So we start with the client that pays. When money moves, then your overall project is starting, right? So we consider the start just at that point. What you're going to be doing is that the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to have a kickoff call. In this kickoff call, you're going to be discussing about few things. First of all, you set the timelines of the project. So how long is it going to take? When? What does it happen? And you align with the business owner. Then you define your availability. The reason is that you will notice that when you start working with businesses or with people overall, they tend to want to start micromanaging things, or they tend to want to have updates and changes, and they will text you at whatever time. So for this reason, one of the things that you need to do immediately is to set an availability slot, maybe, 2 hours, 4 to 6 p.m. CET. You can call me anytime and within that window, and I will answer. If it's outside, I might come back later, or I will come back the day after, right? Once that is done, then you define what success looks like. And this is very important because specifically if you are building automation that are tightly related to sales or to book meetings and etc., these are on one hand very quantifiable because you can actually say how many meetings or bookings someone managed to have, right? Because you can count them. However, you might not be able to control the quality. You can, but I'm just making a random example, right? So you just want to ensure that at the beginning of the project, you have already specified what success looks like and how you can consider that you did a good job, or where you can consider your perimeters of, okay, the automation is like this. And if you want to, add also plumbers because we're targeting recruitment agents, then this is another automation, or this is outside of the scope. Another thing is to help the client with sign up to all platforms. And the reason is because you tend to be rather more technical than they are at this point in time. And you will notice that signing up to platform is an extremely boring, time-consuming thing. And you also want to ensure that you have all of the data and APIs, stuff, and credentials that you need in order to start the project. The reason is that when you deliver a project for your customers as an agency owner, you don't want to have ownership, you don't have an IP over the things that you're developing, but you're developing this system on their account, okay? Then you're gonna track this in a project management system if it's applicable, and only now you start building. Now you need to ask yourself, is this my first project, or did I already deliver such a project, or did I already deliver a similar project before? If it's the first project, what my reco would be is start building an MVP. So we go this route. And the reason is you want to have a first client review. You want to refine the deliverables based on this MVP. And then once that is defined, then you can start building the full automation. And then you can go through this route right here. And if you did already, on the other hand, a similar project, what you want to do is, in this step, you're making a template. Because let's imagine that I ask you, okay, let's run an email campaign on recruitment agents with a personalized icebreaker. And then I want to run it on plumbers. The automation itself is the same. The only thing that's going to change is the database that I'm using in order to generate the icebreakers, because one will be generated based on data from plumbers and one from agency owners. So in this specific example, if you have a template where you can just swap one module and then have the rest the same, this will cut down your cost, increase your revenue per hour and productivity and so on and so forth, and all of those fancy metrics, right? Now, we said that we are starting to build. And what you have to do for both of these, because now here they reconnect, right, is to deliver constant progress update. Once a week email is fine, saying how it's going, blockers, or keeping just updated. And you can have what I created here, which is a regular email that I send for either project updates or delivery updates. It's either or. And the reason is it's always better to keep people informed and involved in the project. And highly recommended, use templates to speed up the process. Send it bi-weekly, and then once the project is completed and you have finished the automation, let's go back to point 1. Let's ensure that this creates business value. So you are gonna run it immediately, and a full automation, right? We are unpinning the data that we were doing, I think on point, 5, whatever it was, just before it's telling you that you should start from the end. And then once you have ensured that the whole project runs properly, then you can consider the project finished. Before having run a full end-to-end test of your workflow, please don't communicate success or project completed and etc. because you will notice that maybe when you test end-to-end, some things may break, like API limit calls, you need to, add wait nodes or many other variables that come into play. Good, so we're testing the workflow, we are implementing checks or stuff, and at that point, before doing anything, we are creating an SOP that says how the system works and how either they can use it, either they can, replicate it, improve it in the future, and etc. We create our Google Doc repository. We are explaining to them how the system is working. We are sending them a Loom video showcasing what's happening. And then what we are going to do is the last part, and we go back right here at point 1, which is fundamentals, because at this point, we don't want to consider, okay, project delivered, goodbye, but we want to re-enter the whole workflow. So we want, again, the client to pay, of course, for needs that they have. We're not scamming people, right? But what we want to do is we want to send an email because within this time, we most likely will have spotted other area or opportunities to implement AI in their businesses. And this is what we call retainer, right? You have there is a bit of confusion on the retainer contract because it's either a monthly payment that you receive to maintain the systems. Depends on you if you want to have it or not. Or it's simply a client that decides to do another project with you, right? That's also some sort of retainer contract. And with this, you have your 80% of AI automation basics in place for you to be able to start and scale your AI agency in a fraction of time of your competitors. And if you want to connect with other people that are building and scaling their own AI automation agency, you can check the first link down below, which will lead you to my community.